So Cam Ward was a quarterback that I liked during the draft process, and I did see him as a first rounder, but believe it or not, I wouldn't have taken him with the first overall pick, and there were 3 other quarterbacks who I had ahead of him in my final ranking. I thought he was very talented, but I also felt there were some processing issues, and head coach of the Titans, Brian Callahan, runs a fairly complex system. So today I'm going to be breaking down Cam Ward's preseason film, and the talent is still clear, but I think you're also going to see that I'm not crazy for having some doubts. If you do enjoy the content, please consider liking and subscribing, as it would be very much appreciated. Now let's take a look. He starts off with an incompletion, but nothing wrong with the processing here, just nothing comes open. But I'm throwing the challenge flag on this second play because my main issue with Cam Ward's processing coming out of college was the lack of anticipation and the unwillingness to take the easy throw. He starts by looking to his left on this play. He's sensing that pressure could be imminent, but the pocket is clean and there's absolutely no reason to come away from these reads. I mean, this is 2 wide open receivers. And like I'm saying, it was this sort of thing in college, ignoring blatant reads, maybe searching for a bigger play. This is something that he really needs to change, and maybe he will. I think the next play is a great example of how the broadcast can fool us, because I'm watching this on the broadcast before the All-22 comes out like everyone else. And already I'm going, look at this throw from Cam Ward, pushing the ball downfield already, and I'm a sucker for the intermediate throw. But then I'm watching it on the All-22, and I'm thinking, is it just me or was that receiver open for a long time? And yeah, he's looking in this direction, and the receiver is coming open now. Look how long he just seems to watch it until he seems to switch on and decide to throw the ball. And it may seem harsh to be so critical on a completion, but in the regular season when the starters are in, receivers aren't able to wander around in acres of space for a very long time, and this opportunity will have been missed. On the flip side, I love aggressive quarterbacks as long as they're taking what's there to be had, and this is what Cam Ward can look like when he's a bit more anticipatory. And okay, it's not a perfect throw, but it's an excellent read. And then on a very similar play, he's going to hit Calvin Ridley again on the crossing route. And this is why he was drafted with the first overall pick. He can make these throws all day because he's got a great arm with a very modern day sidearmy motion, which means that despite not being the biggest, he can fit it between these defenders and access the middle of the field. Now, here's my question about Cam Ward. When he does show some anticipation, is it because he's seeing the full picture the way a quarterback needs to, or is he just seeing an opportunity and throwing it? Because there was nothing wrong with the 2 decisions he just made, but now on this one, he just takes one glance over and throws it, and this ball just should not have been thrown. This is where he decides he's going to throw the ball, and this is the receiver he's going for. Now, although the receiver looks pretty well covered, he does look to have half a step, and I can understand the idea of throwing a 50-50 ball, but a 50-50 ball to the sideline like this can't be flat. You've got to try and float it over the head of the defender because he's going to have the inside leverage. There's 2 issues with throwing a floaty, high-arcing ball here. One is that Cam Ward doesn't do it very well because of the sidearmy motion he has, but also this is exactly the sort of thing that this safety is there for. You float this out there and he's going to be all over it. So whether or not it's because he's recognised this, Cam Ward's going to try and throw the 50-50 ball, and he's just going to try and throw it flat enough to not get the safety involved. But as we've established, the cornerback has inside leverage, and in a regular season game, this is quite possibly a turnover. So definitely some things to work on in this game, but he does finish off with a nice anticipatory throw, and we'll see if it looks any better in week 2. So week 2 starts pretty strong, as I think he's quite right to leave the pocket here and makes an accurate throw on the run. But I should warn you that this is about as good as it gets in week 2, as you can probably tell by the stats on the right side of your screen. And again on this play, I have some serious issues with the processing. His decision to leave the pocket is fine, but this is the receiver he's going to try and throw to. Now, I don't have a huge issue with this, but it's got to be now or he's going to run out of space. If he's not going to do that, the more sensible option, honestly, would probably be to be throwing to this receiver, and there's a bit more room for error. Instead, he ends up holding onto the ball for a few seconds before still trying to throw it to the deeper receiver, and obviously it just kind of floats out of bounds because there was no space. So again, there just seems to be a lack of anticipation. And then this play, again, is where the broadcast can fool you, because the issue here isn't that it was an incompletion. It was actually an excellent effort in terms of the execution of this throw. But this is the receiver he's trying to throw to, and this is where he decides he's going to pull the trigger. And in preseason, he gets away with this, but he's throwing into blatant double coverage here. This check down should be automatic, and I'll say again that he is not going to get away with this when the starters are in and everyone's a bit more on their toes. We then have a couple of screens before another incompletion, and this one I don't want to pin too much on him, as there wasn't a ton to work with, and I appreciate he didn't want to piss about in his own end zone too much, but again, for a quarterback in the NFL, this is an automatic check down. If anything, the fact he's under pressure should be giving him even less reason to consider this receiver as an option. I also have an element of sympathy on this next one because I can see how he got fooled, but he's going to see a lot more of this in the regular season. What he sees is that this defender seems to be covering this receiver, and therefore this receiver should find some space underneath. But what he's not picked up on is that they're playing zone coverage, and this safety's free to come down and make this his man, meaning the cornerback can switch on to Cam Ward's target, and it leads to an incompletion. So credit to the Falcons because this is pretty impressive defense, but from Cam Ward's perspective, if he's going to be a good quarterback in the NFL, he needs to see the full picture and take the easy throw. But then we see on this play again, when he knows where he's going with the football, he looks great, which is why I wish he was going into a simpler system. And then we finish off with another incompletion. This one not really his fault, just nothing open, so he tries to throw the 50-50 ball. But I have to say, as we move into this final game, my concerns for Cam Ward coming out of the draft have not been put to bed. So Ward had a much smoother run in this game, starting things off with a screen. Although my only real nitpick in this game comes on this play. He feels the pressure early and escapes, but ideally, I'd like to see him hang in there just an extra moment and find his check down. But that's being pretty picky, and from this point on it's smooth sailing. He loves throwing to this corner route, and as long as it's open, that's no problem with me because he's got the talent to make these throws consistently, and that's why he was drafted first overall. And let me just remind you that I did see him as a first rounder, and this is what I saw. I'm not going to give him any credit for the processing on this one because he is staring down this receiver the whole time, but this is why I saw him in a simpler system. As long as he doesn't have too much to figure out, he can throw with anticipation, and we've established he has the arm talent. Not really a lot he can do on this one. But then he finishes off nicely, escaping the pocket and making an accurate throw on the run. And then an anticipatory, accurate quick throw. So, I'll be honest, I've just seen all the same concerns that I saw from him coming out of college, and I know that everyone's just going to brush them under the carpet. He's a rookie, he's talented, everyone likes Cam Ward, he's a cool character. I'm not brushing these concerns under the carpet, because they're real concerns. I never liked Cam Ward for the Titans. It is a system where you have to go through multiple progressions, and talent in an NFL quarterback is not as important as being able to handle the system. And honestly, I'm surprised that previous Titans quarterback Will Levis hasn't taught us that lesson. Will Levis was very talented, and I don't know that I would have seen his processing as worse than Cam Ward coming out of college. I actually think the Titans have done a really good job in the offseason. They drafted Kevin Winston in the 3rd round, who was my number 1 safety, and they also drafted Shamar DK, who was a receiver I liked, and then after that they drafted Elik Oyominor, who was actually my number 1 receiver. They've already got Calvin Ridley. Okonkwo, the tight end, could be ready to break out. He's very athletic. So in terms of receivers, they could be sneaky. And having splashed out on Dan Moore Jr. at left tackle, and then also bringing in guard Kevin Zeitler, I think their offensive line could be really solid. So I'm not saying it's going to be all bad things next year. And Cam Ward will probably have some games where he looks like he did in week 2 of preseason against the Falcons, and then some other games like that last one against the Vikings where everything's in rhythm and he's just showing off his ability to throw the football. With that said, I'm not just looking at next year, I'm looking at the next 5 years. And sometimes the real test isn't the rookie season. Everyone's a bit more sympathetic for quarterbacks in their rookie season, as long as they're showing flashes, which Cam Ward will. My issue is that 5 years down the road, I think he might still be showing flashes, but I also think it's possible that he hasn't magically gained the ability to run this Brian Callahan offense, and we see another first-round quarterback fall closer to a bust than a consistent starter. So that's where I stand on Cam Ward. But he does some things I like, so I'm looking forward to seeing if he can prove me wrong in the regular season. If you did enjoy the content, please consider liking and subscribing, as it greatly supports the channel, and I'll see you next time.